Books are better than films. No. Films are better than books. Well, if we want to be honest about it, a film adaptation of a book is never as good as the book. Or you may say, well, whichever one you prefer is the best. Do you know the debate over films versus books, in fact I'm sure you do know, has been going on pretty much ever since films began, I suppose. And for some reason, we as humans can't help but dip our toe into the debate at times, because storytelling is part of us since time immemorial. Since humans have been around, we've told stories. And as humans, we always have our own preferences for things. I'm actually asked quite a number of times whether I think books are better than films. But if I just give you my opinion, that's got no weight at all. So what I'm doing in this as the first video is a series of videos which I hope will help us to explore books and films in an even-handed way and a comprehensive way. Because a lot of the arguments made for or against are really, they boil down to just asserting preference. You will hear in any discussion about this some variant on a theme of these kind of comments. Books are better because you have to think more when you're reading them. Both tell the same stories, essentially. Movies are better because books are too long-winded and now we've got the ability just to see things straight away. Films are worse because they leave stuff out that books don't. Whatever you like is best. People who claim books are better are snobs. Film is much more lowbrow. So, whenever you've had this discussion, you'll find some variation on those ideas. The truth is, all of those ideas are actually faulty. If we're generous, we can see some of them, maybe the point that's vaguely being made, but not expressed very well. So like I say, starting in this video, let's explore books and films and weigh up their merits, their strengths and their weakness relative to one another. Through this course, we're going to look at people like Hardy and Eliot and Dostoevsky and Jane Austen. We'll get insights into perhaps why it's arguable that the 95 BBC rendition of Pride and Prejudice, even if you don't think it's the best version, is probably the most faithful version, and how it pertains to the book itself. We'll look into films like Inception and Jaws and 2001 Odyssey and the classic 50s film Rafifi to see also some of the strengths that film has, which literature doesn't. We'll touch on the actual topic of why it feels more frequently that a book is better than a movie rendition of a book. But at the same time, we'll also look at why a film and film itself can often be more truthful than books can be. So, having said all that, I want to start with just the first of the series, and that's going to focus on the topic of drama itself. Because this is why there is a debate between books and films, is because both of them are dramatic arts. Now, when I say dramatic, I'm talking about it's to do with activity and movement. For instance, you would never compare a film to a painting. A painting can capture a moment in time, very much like a poem versus a book. A painting can have wonderful things about it. It can raise nostalgia. It can raise a desire for knowing the story behind the scenes. It can be evocative, but it never ever moves. You'll never see that character get up and start interacting with other characters beyond the moment. Film can, of course, and so do books. Both of them are mediums through which we explore our activity as humans. Even when we're using animals, like in Lion King, they're imbued with human character. And so we're telling or watching an action, a movie, a story work out in front of us that we can relate to, that has cause and effects, that has meanings that are driven by desires, and we can see the outworking of the story. This is why the two are so often compared to each other, because they both deal with drama. with actual activity. And of course, plays would fall into this as well. And actually, Shakespeare will come up also in a later video. So because it's drama-based, I thought the best way to start this series is just to get an idea of what forms drama. Because we'll find that both literature and film use these things. But having a look at them will immediately identify a difference between how they both go about handling what makes up a drama. So to do this, we're going to go back to Aristotle, because Aristotle, in his work Poetics, laid out 6 elements that make up drama. And if they're done very, very well, will make up good drama. However, our discussion is not necessarily about whether a book is a good book versus a poor book, good film versus a poor film. We just want to look at how they're made. What's the underlying element? So this will be worth taking your time to even learn the terms, and you do not need to be at university, you do not need a degree in literature or film, but learn the terms because it really helps get hold of them and will help you in further discussions. If you want to fight for your team, this will help you. So let's go through the 6. The first of the 6 elements Aristotle lists for drama, and which he says is by far the most important, is mythos. Now, mythos, according to Aristotle, is action, or we may call it plot. It is the tale, as it were. So, Aristotle says that when we watch drama, we're watching the activities of people. We see them do this, then this, then this, then this, and it works out to a conclusion. And that conclusion we hopefully as an audience find satisfying. Now, some books, some films do this really well, others do it very poorly. And Aristotle says that a really good drama does its mythos in a particular way. Each scene, each action causes another one organically. So we see a character do something, and then this happens because of it. And because that happens, it makes them respond in a certain way, which may make someone else respond in a certain way. And so it goes. The story should organically and believably lead on and then round out with a proper ending. So that's mythos. Now, already you can see that both literature and film use this. You know, it is what we call plot, really. And something with a bad plot, something where we're left scratching our heads. We think, well, how did they get into that situation? Nothing makes sense up to that point. Or why are they behaving in a weird kind of way? Why is there an earthquake that gets our protagonist out of prison? You know, we feel that's cheating, it's not natural. So both books and film use mythos, and we will discuss this at a later point. Second element on the list is ethos. Ethos is character, because mythos may be the action we watch unfold, the great tale, but the tale is driven by the characters and their inner character. Now, that's why we expect a person in a story or a film to behave in a certain way. If a character has been developed which would never ever do anything harmful to anyone and couldn't abide fighting or anything, to have them suddenly turn into a warrior, we'd think, well, that's not real. Or to have someone that is shy and completely unable to fight, unless we see them take a progression to the point of getting stronger, for them to just turn up in the middle of a fight and win would not match their character that we've come to know. And obviously with character, it's not just about physical details, it's more about the inner person. Because overall, that's how stories have been used through time, is to reveal something about the human condition, what makes us, us. And that's ethos. By the way, I do appreciate this is in very broad brushstrokes, but this is all that's needed to introduce the rest of the series. So now we come on to the third one. So far, film and literature, you can't say that either of them lack mythos or ethos. Like, they need them both. You need characters, you need action, you need the action to make sense. The third element is dianoia, and that means thought. If it's the thought that makes a man is an old idea. If a person is acting in a particular way, that's their character. And because of their character, they do something. You have to ask, where did their character come from? And all of our character comes from our inner thoughts. And so drama, we need to know the thoughts of characters in order to really understand who they truly are. The more we can know about their thinking, the much more deeply we know about their character itself. And so, in all story, our protagonists and our antagonists, and maybe some of the supporting casts, we hope to get an insight into the way that they think. Because the action has to make sense based on the character, and that character will only make sense if we know their real internal model of the world. Now, of course, literature and film both seek to reveal the thoughts of their characters, to let the audience be able to perceive the thinking that creates the person. But we'll come back to dianoia in a minute. First, we'll move on to point 4. Lexus is speech. We get the word lexicon, meaning words. Speech is vital for storytelling. We often think in words. The way we deal with one another is through words and reasoning and questions and all that kind of stuff. So naturally, both film and books will use speech. Even in the days of silent movies, didn't they used to just put up a screen which had a caption on of what someone is saying to the other person? So speech is involved, and obviously there's loads of dialogue now. When you get a screenplay, the majority of it is the script of what the actors are going to say. Of course, in a book, there's even more in terms of speech, because the description isn't visual, it's actually words. In fact, you often have a narrator rather than a protagonist telling us things about the story. So lexis is involved in both, but already can you see there is actually a difference in how you would get the use of words in a book. For instance, we've said a narrator who is not part of the book, whereas you may, on the whole, you're not going to get that inside a film. But lexis is actually how we fundamentally know the thoughts of a person, by what they say. We can know thoughts by what someone simply does as well. But since as creatures we talk and act, and normally we talk before we act, lexis is strongly tied to dianoia, and both dramatic forms need lexis. Now we move on to the last two, which I'm going to put together. Melos and opsis. Melos is music, melody. Opsis is spectacle, visual. Now, in ancient drama, along with the stage scene, you used to have melodies playing, and the melodies could introduce a certain character. Melodies give you a certain vibe, a certain atmosphere. If there are discordant notes, we tend to think something sinister or a bad guy is on the scene. If you hear something triumphal or bonny, you think this is a lovely person or this is a hero. And so melody is often involved in drama. In fact, we are musical creatures, like most creatures around the world, I suppose. Opsis is the actual depiction of something. So in drama, in ancient Greece, as much as you would have a lot of talking, well, they tried to embellish that with as vivid a spectacle as they could make. You know, if there was a war scene, if you could get people on the stage to fight, all well and good. Why is it that quite a number of wars take place off stage in plays? It's because to try and actually create the spectacle of a full-blown battle on a stage, quite difficult if you don't have hundreds of people going at it hammer and tongs. Of course, film has the ability now to capture back in the day, you think of Spartacus, how many extras did they have? You get hundreds, thousands even could turn up. With CGI, we're able to create hordes of people in a battle, for instance. Or if there's a panic scene, we can do that. Or imagine an explosion. That was pretty hard to do back in the day, wasn't it? It was dangerous because you could burn the theatre down, like Exeter. Exeter Theatre back in the 19th century burnt down just because of a stage lamp. But with film, it's much more safe. And that spectacle, we as humans want to see. We love seeing. But of course, books do spectacle as well because they describe. And some people describe so brilliantly well that we feel as though we're there. But now that we've mentioned all of them, and actually even with Melos, books use Melos, melody, often by the rhythm of sentences or the rhythms of speech. Plays have a certain cadence. Shakespeare uses iambic pentameter a lot, which has a very ennobling and hypnotic effect when you're listening to it spoken. Now we've talked about all of those, you'll recognise that all of them are involved in both literature and film. However, they're not all used equally. And this is the point. They are two mediums. And when people say, well, they both tell the same story but in a different medium, that's actually slightly incorrect because it treats them as if they're just two containers with the same story in. As we'll see later in this series, the medium itself changes the story altogether. The medium is the message. And an example of that is if we were to look at the main loci of books compared to the loci of film, while both use mythos and ethos, which create the structural framework, books lean much more heavily on dianoia. It's something intrinsic about the medium which it's very good at doing. The ability to capture thoughts. Now, that does not mean films can't capture the thoughts of their characters, but literature has a particular advantage in how many ways it can capture thought. Whereas film, its loci, is more around melos and opsis, because film can literally capture us. You don't have to describe a landscape with film, do you? You can just film it. Okay, you don't have to necessarily describe you don't go into a film and at the beginning someone is describing this person's got this colour hair, this colour, unless it's a photo fit for some crime drama, these colour eyes, whatever, a scar. The camera can literally show you the face. The film can also use a musical score, which is something a book cannot do. And therefore a book will rely more on the melody of voice, which arguably is not so prevalent in film. I'm not saying it isn't there, but just not so prevalent. So already we can see that when we discuss the book or the film, they're not totally equal. They come at mythos from different directions. They have a particular set of tools which are very good at achieving certain things that the others are not so good at. And because of that, we end up perhaps leaning towards a preference. And as we'll see in a later discussion, if the argument goes, well, you say films lean on opsis, they can capture the moment with a camera. Well, if you've got a good imagination, you can do that with a book. It is true that you can imagine with a book. I've got some very vivid scenes from books that I've read. However, the part of the brain that is used for both of those is different. They are not the same. So to say imagination equals the spectacle that a camera can pick up is not accurate at all. It's poetically a lovely idea, but it just isn't how we work. And we'll see later just how that can be quite forceful in different ways, sometimes quite nefarious ways as regards our modern civilization. So I said these were going to be short videos, so that's it. Just to go through the 6 things again. Mythos, let's think of it as plot overall, and it's the action on stage. Ethos, that is the character of a person, not just the person's name, their character. Dianoia, It's the thoughts. The thought maketh the man. Lexus, speech, is what often gives away our thoughts, or it's what we use to explicitly state our thoughts. Of course, the problem being anyone can use speech to hide their true thinking. And of course, both mediums will have to use that. Then we have Melos, which is melody, often literally music back in the day, can be used in rhythms in writing, but melody and sound. And then opsis. Opsis is the actual spectacle, something for the audience to actually see, not imagine. Because even in old plays, the language makes you imagine certain stuff, but the spectacle lets you experience it viscerally there and then. So those are the 6. Try and learn them, try and memorize them, and already you may think, that's why I like books more than films, because of the heavy emphasis on the thoughts of a person. Or it may be, that's why I like film, because I love the ability of blending music with the story. Now, neither are better simply because of those 2 things. But starting here helps us, one, to see that we're talking about different mediums which of themselves will change a story, and it can already start to express why an interpretation in film of a book isn't necessarily the same. But like I say, we'll come to later points as we go through these different aspects in individual videos, but we're not starting with mythos. The next video will start with dianoia, because that's the strength of literature, but we're going to see how film does it, because it's wonderful how film tries to capture thoughts. And then we're going to look at Melos and opsis, how film does it and how books do it, because that's quite fascinating as well. Then we'll move into lexus, ethos, and finish with the most important, mythos. The reason I say it's most important is it's most important for the dramatic arts as a whole. And it actually explains whether you love films or books or both, why some are better than others. I don't mean book versus film. This film is better than that film. This book is better than that book. Why? Mythos and ethos are often at the root of that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me if you're going to subscribe so that you can watch the next bunch of them, but they will be coming up over the next 5 weeks. So hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out. This will be a mini course in itself. Until the next time, I wish you joy in whatever you read.